There
Yeah,
is no job that an American won't take. There are only pay scales Americans won't tolerate.
it's a political spectrum, and we're all on it.
It's
Oh,
not the only spectrum I'm on. Like a Pee Wee Herman kind of,
yeah.
oh, that sounded Bob Dole. Bob Dole does look like Bob Dole. Immigrant spending power in Texas amounts to $32.3 billion. 67% of Texas immigrants work. Only 64% of native born Texans work. 1.9 million undocumented people in Texas paid $4.9 billion in taxes last year. That's not a small number. That
Yeah.
is not a small number. And for the record, I don't think Trump will be able to carry out these deportations on the scale that he says he will.
Thanks.
A lot of
Yeah.
it is just pandering. You know, that's just what he does. He's a politician.
Yeah.
That's even with a
Which is
guy like
ironic.
Tom Homan at his side, and Tom Homan looks like a guy named Tom Homan. I don't know if you've seen pictures of him.
There's
He's
a
the
lot of
border
those.
czar, which isn't news. But yeah,
That's
Tom
like,
Homan looks like a bad motherfucker, dude. Like, look
yeah,
at this,
that's like Bob Dole. Bob Dole just looks like Bob Dole,
Bob Dole. Bob Dole does look like Bob Dole,
right?
but look at this dude. Like,
Uh,
that dude's in control of the border. Does he not look exactly like you thought he would?
God, unfortunately, yeah. It just makes sense. And like to make this even more delightful, I started out as a conservative as a kid and turned into a liberal as I got older, which is supposedly the inverse of how it works.
It
So like
usually is.
that tickles not my liberal side. That's like, ha ha ha, that's how I imagine this kind of villain would be. It's actually tickling my conservative side where I'm like, yeah, that looks like exactly the kind of person I would expect to be doing that kind of job. Of course, he's a little overweight.
I have he's stocky though. He looks like he's strong at
Mhm.
one point. Probably still is fucking strong, but he resonates with something inside of me because I look like this. I'm sure, and because like you, I grew up around a bunch of conservatives. Although I was more deeply liberal back then than I am now. So I guess I went a little bit more of that traditional political leaning route, but I am also not a conservative. I'm just more conservative than I was when I was 18. But still, there is something like when you listen to him talk, the guy's got shit under control. Like when you listen to him
That's a
talk, you're like,
thing.
dude, this guy might be president in the next 8 years for all I know. And it's like, fuck yeah, we
Like
do
now.
have to go and control that border because like it is a problem. And I'm not being sarcastic or ironic here. Like it is a
Mhm.
problem. There are legitimate, there, they got the Tren de Aragua gangs taking over high rises in Colorado and and they specialize in human trafficking. So that's spiked up. And then
God.
they're tucked away in these sanctuary cities that like authorities cannot get to. Federal
So
authorities
it's
cannot go into New York City prisons or
one thing that gets
jails.
me on stuff like this too is like it's really easy to get locked into the political left versus right conflict on this, right? Of because like I immediately had in my head this like, oh God, like the way we could solve it is we just have a program where we just come across the border, we got you. Like you're American now, we're American. Kind of how we're it's kind of how our propaganda teaches us we're supposed to be. But
It's
then
funny how that
when I
works.
think about it further, like, yeah, I think that's my socialist dream of how we would treat it. Of like, hey, you don't have to fear. Come on, we'll figure something out. We've got a lot of land. We're the richest fucking nation in the world. We'll build you a new fucking city. Something like there's some way where we could do this. And like you said, they spend money, so they contribute to the economy. They pay taxes.
Massively.
But
Massively.
then I
$5 billion in taxes last year.
yeah, and I never thought
1.9
to think
million
about that.
undocumented.
I never thought to think about their spending in the economy, which is just it's kind of funny. I never thought of it.
Well,
Um,
that's why we're here. Which
yeah,
actually brings me to a point. Usually, we go into these topics pretty well educated by the point we meet and discuss these. This week, we're trying something a little bit different, where one of us has the majority of the facts, the other one listens, and he's entertaining, hopefully.
yes. Yeah, just to finish out that thought, it makes me realize if we get stuck in the left versus right, this isn't a left versus right failure. This is our government kind of failing us. Like there should be faster movement on trying to help with these things. If it is misinformation, it needs to be revealed and detailed. And when it's not, like situations with gangs and stuff getting out of control, why has our government failed us? Why is the Fed not providing enough money down to the state and regional governments to be able to handle these problems? Like
Right.
I feel like we're all on the same page. It just doesn't feel like shit
Well,
works.
see, this is the tricky part because we all do want a better
Yeah.
America for immigrants. It's just not all of us understand how to get there, and almost none
Yeah.
of us agree on how to get there.
Yeah.
That's where it
Yeah.
gets a little sticky,
Systems.
and especially for a state like Texas, whose
Yeah.
like construction industry is 40% immigrants, dude.
Mhm.
I don't know how many
Mhm.
of those are undocumented, but it's probably not a small amount. And especially when the average salary of a construction worker is 35K a year in Texas. Now that averages out to like 17 and change an hour. But you know goddamn well they're
Really?
not working 40 hours. So they're not working
Yeah.
only 40 hours. They're probably working 50, 60 hours. So
Above.
they're probably
Yeah.
making 13 to 15 an hour.
Yeah. No, that's a very fair point.
And then you take into consideration the average home cost in Texas, 365 or $367,000, and it takes an average of 960 man hours. I put a different zero, too many zeros. 960 man hours to build,
Jesus.
and that equals about $163,000 in labor. That is paying these guys, we'll say, $15 an hour.
Yeah.
Now that leaves about $200,000 for supplies, rentals, resources, and of course profit.
Yeah. Damn.
Texas housing prices is about to get a hell of a lot more expensive.
Which kind of works out for the elite in the long run. Make it more rare. It's easier to charge more for. There's been lots of these houses being bought up, put into what do you call them? Almost like trusts. They're businesses that just buy these things and rent them out.
Yeah.
And BlackRock does it a lot. We need a fucking like every time we come back to BlackRock.
We like a Pee Wee Herman kind of.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounded that was rough. I apologize for that. Yikes! Yikes! I'll just pretend that didn't happen. So, the Texas housing is about to get more expensive, and it's a red
Fuck
state,
yeah.
so the average wage there isn't all that great anyway.
Yeah.
And I see a very visible route for people like Elon Musk and other billionaires who are swarming Austin right now to go in, hijack all of this.
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
they're the only ones that are allowed, or not, well, I guess financially allowed, they're the only ones who have the means to start buying property. Who's to stop them from becoming lords of land? Like, who's to stop this from
Yeah.
becoming feudalism again? I
Yeah.
see a way for people like Musk, who is already planning a corporate
Mhm.
town, a Tesla and SpaceX town. By the way, it's
Yep.
called Starbase. Pretty cool.
Oh, could have been
Again,
Star Command.
Musk
Shit.
is just knocking it out of the park with these names, dude.
Yeah, it
I
should have
got to
been
give
Star
credit where
Command.
credit's due.
It's dramatic, but
It
fuck.
is.
Saying you work at Starbase sounds badass. Like, yeah, he is really good at gamifying things.
It will. Oh, see, it's not even working because the let's see here. I actually have it right here. Um, so let's see here. In that time, I'm starting in the middle of an article here, but it's a New York Times article. But in that time, SpaceX employees have packed into newly refurbished mid-century homes. And nope, that's not the paragraph I want. It's talking about whatever. It's talking about how a SpaceX employee is going to be the mayor.
Oh,
I
sweet
just
Jesus.
forget what SpaceX
Mm,
employee. It named the title in there. I'm not going to spend the time and bore you guys looking for it. So, SpaceX employees are going to be star-based civil personnel, also aldermans and treasurers and all
Oh,
these
that's
things,
weird.
comptrollers.
Yeah. Oh, that's weird.
And it's just a way for them to get control. So, like, if all of the immigrants are deported, say Trump is successful in his rhetoric here, all the immigrants are deported. Housing prices are going to go from $367,000 on average to probably $500,000 on average.
Yeah.
And you have to make,
That's
I don't
approaching
know,
California
what,
levels.
100K a year probably to comfortably afford $500,000, maybe more. I don't know.
Yeah, it's got to be a lot. Like 100K seems like a lot, but as soon as you try to like participate in the market, like we were taught we were supposed to be able to buy a house, buy a car, especially if you're thinking with a single spouse, like and them not working. Holy Jesus, it's not a lot. Taxes obliterate that.
Mhm. And so
It's insane.
there's already examples of corporate towns going up in Vermont, New Hampshire, Colorado, California, ski towns mostly. Um,
Yeah,
was it
another
Van
failure of our
Aspen
government.
are two pretty well known examples of that. They're not entirely corporate towns, but they have corporate subsidized housing. That's pretty fucking close. It's just like how many hairs do we have to split, right? Before we
Yeah.
get from
Yeah.
corporate subsidized housing, which means your job is paying for your housing and
Yep.
also giving you
Which
a
is a
paycheck.
it's bad enough having just your health insurance tied to employment. Think of the
Yes.
leverage they're gonna have over you.
Yes. You're starting to see where I'm going now.
God, yeah.
See, I
Oh,
thought
it's
at
so
first, I was
disgusting.
like, I did go into, so I am, in the interest of full transparency, I am for part of these deportations because I
Mhm.
see some of the shit that is wrong. Like
Yeah,
I see the spike in crime, I see the damage
yeah,
done to the immigrant communities that are here because in sanctuary cities specifically because the cartels are living in those fucking apartment buildings and they can't get in there. I see all that like that's a humanitarian crisis. I have no idea how to handle it. It's not my job to figure it out. That's not what we're
yeah.
doing here. What we're doing
But
here
there's
is
gotta be a
just
better way.
explaining what could happen to Texans and people
Yeah,
who live in states like Arizona and California that have massive undocumented
yeah,
population
yeah,
and populations who
yeah.
participate in the workforce to a large degree.
God. Okay, this
Corporate towns
reminds
are about
me
to become another thing or a new thing again.
this reminds me, and I always love this anecdote because it was just the weirdest cosmic experience I ever had. Was listening to NPR as a kid, and it was during the 2010 collapses of the economy
As
and
a kid,
everything. And well, I was young. um, but listening to an NPR article saying basically that there was a wave of reverse immigration. All these people left and went back to their families. They brought all of the money and stuff they had saved over like almost a decade and just pulled that money out of the economy. And it shocked California. And I don't know why this isn't talked about more because it was actually like technically it's a great point for a conservative to bring up, but it caused this kind of flash crash where we just boom, we're suddenly hit with it. And they were saying, like, unfortunately, in wine country, there are now not enough immigrants to pick the grapes. So a lot of grapes are just being left to rot on the vine. This is a wild thing in wine country where I grew
rot
up
on the
because that's the
vine. That's
economy,
metal as fuck.
right? But what ended up happening was nothing. Those grapes rotted on the vine. So they're like, oh, it's such a shame. It's going to be a huge loss to the economy. And then it cuts to another pre-recorded NPR piece where they're like, and today we're going to talk about jobless youth in America and how common it is simply because they cannot find jobs. And I'm sitting there staring at this of like, my God, we really have transitioned out of this old economy. Our kids don't even think about working in fields. It was just the
You
funniest damn series of interactions in radio shows that I'd ever heard. Someone must have done it purposely.
you hit on something there. You hit on two things actually. The first, what something you said in that second part, you made me think of HB1 wage suppressions. Musk is a big fan
Ooh,
of these.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll explain how it works real quick.
Yep,
In 2023, Tesla hired 794 immigrant tech workers,
yep,
HB1 visa holders.
yep.
Under the HB1 visa laws, you get to hire HB1 visa immigrants only if you cannot find Americans to fill those roles. Do you see where
Ah,
I'm going with this?
oh my God, instantly.
Who the fuck like you couldn't have found 800 American tech workers to work for Tesla? Why?
Yeah, bullshit.
They are obviously offering way too little of a money for way too big of a contribution. And Indians and South Americans and Nigerians don't give a fuck. They're just happy to be in Texas, motherfucker.
God, we're taking advantage of so
So
many people. Ah,
So Elon Musk has no lineage here. We need to establish this real fucking fast. Elon Musk has no lineage here. He has no tie to the United States of America other than to its money. He is only here to extract wealth.
yeah,
That's
he's like,
it. And I'm kind of quoting Jimmy Dore there, but he is only here to extract wealth.
yeah,
He's doing so by bringing in immigrants and paying them less than an American would take for that job. And this is actually what you said.
yeah,
I reminded myself of what you said that made me think of this.
yeah,
There is no job that an American won't take. There are only pay scales Americans won't tolerate.
yeah. Oh, fuck yeah. That's a really good point. Fuck. Yeah, you take that authoritative sip. Jesus.
dude, standing right here, like
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
feeling
no,
it. I'm about to do
verbal.
a cartwheel and shit. About to bob the
Damn.
beam and
No, that's a really good point
all
because
that.
there was a social media trend that went around a while ago where it was someone saying like, yeah, but like you wouldn't work fast food and get paid $100,000 for it. Like you would hate it. And someone was just well, like, bitch, please, I'll work it. Like I'll work it right now. That sounds great. I'll make it my entire life. I'm good. That's all I want. And then people are
Honestly,
like, no, 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 no. Yeah, it's beneath you. You can't do that. Da, 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 da.
yeah. See, this is where that so Americans have a weird work culture around immigrants, I think, where like
Mhm.
they're coming for our jobs kind of thing. It's like, well, they weren't coming for your, they're not. Maybe you should just go
They're
get those jobs and secure those jobs and make it
yeah,
so those those employers rather don't have room to hire immigrants. Make it so
yeah,
you guys are fully staffing them. Like put so much pressure on the employers in your area to hire you and
yeah,
become very, very hireable. So hireable that you become unemployable.
yeah. And well, here's the fun part to put the twist on it of this works out in the system. They can hire cheaper labor. They can take advantage of other people. It doesn't matter that they're from another country or have a different color in their skin, if you want to call it race, whatever. They're taking advantage of other human beings, which means they're doing this double dirty. They're doing dirty to these poor people who deserve the same wages that you would get, but also they're lying to you about this lack of an ability to pay well. They can damn well pay what they should
Yeah.
to keep you as an employee,
And
even
there
if
is
it's
no
harvesting. Even if it's seasonal, you can pay good.
burden of proof requirement for the HB1 visa, by the way. Like you just say no one will take my job.
So
So you can just
then
bring whatever you want.
So there's a buzz in the tech world about this very thing because of what Musk has been doing, and Microsoft and a few other of the bigs. They will lay people off, but it's not being framed as we're struggling, we're having this problem, we're laying people off. It's they're thinning the ranks by looking for poor performers, and they wipe out a huge batch of people. Now that basically fucks those people because if they're associated with that layoff and they're looking for a job, the big corporations are going to believe that they were fired for a reason when
Let's talk
really
about unemployable. Microsoft is making you unemployable by smearing your name after they fire you.
yeah, absolutely, like it screws you over, but then they can take that and say, look, hey government, hear me out. I just had to lay off 1,500 employees because they were all so bad at their job. I need those H1s. I need the visas.
I think we could hook you up with that, son.
Yeah, it's what's best for the country. I'm making jobs. Fuck. And one thing is I want to bring up too on this is like the Indian mention in tech is common. I run into this a lot, and sometimes I run into like a weird uh, it's racism from them to us, where I've actually had this conversation where there are some Indian guys who are like, you don't understand, we're hired because we're better than you. We're better at everything tech than you. It started
Vivek
here before you
Ramaswamy
made it
would
great.
sure as fuck think so.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So there's this kind of
He
like
says
attitude. But, like, seeing people do that, all I hear in the back of my head is just like, "Oh my god, kid, do you know what they would pay me, though? If I were in your position, I'd be paid 30, 40, $50,000 more than you are." And that's the problem, like, we're not fighting each other. Oh god. Okay, I'm done, I swear.
no, no, like all of those
Oh,
are
fuck.
fantastic points. You just hit all of the nails on the head. I mean,
It's
do we think
scary.
well, it's scary only because we're so easily pitted against each other. And you know what? I
Fuck
think it's
yeah.
largely a language barrier. And it's just like you want to talk about unconscious biases. We've covered that before. Talk about unconscious biases. That is one of those. It's a very obvious one too. You just like you see an Indian guy in an IT firm or something, and you're just like, well, that guy's the best one here, huh? It's just like what you think. It's maybe it's your first thought, and you never listen to your
Yeah.
first thought. You listen to your second thought, but your first thought is the exact thing that the unconscious bias is supposed to represent.
Yeah. God.
Uh,
Holy shit. So So connecting the dots, because you're basically drawing this line from, if the mass deportation is pulled off in the way that Trump wants to do it, claims he's going to do it. Let's put it that way. Then this would have this ripple effect that would rip through like construction industry. So that's going to pop housing prices up. But then it's also going to damage the tax revenue. It's also going to damage just the economy in general because all these people are going to pull back. And
Yeah.
we kind of know from experience, like Americans aren't going to hop to these jobs because they don't pay living wages. Everyone's hunting for that right now.
I'm testament to that. So I have worked in factory and construction pretty much my entire adult life, and I've worked in farming as a teenager. So I've been around
Sick.
my fair share of immigrant workers, and they are incredibly hard workers for the
Holy
most
shit.
part. Obviously, you get some shitheads everywhere, but for the most part, it's because they have something to live for here. And so, like, just deporting some of your hardest workers who are already underpaid and working longer hours than is
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah.
Dude, you're
But are
just shooting yourself in the
so,
foot. You're shooting the people that
yeah.
voted for you in the foot, which is the fucking craziest part. Eh,
Yeah.
I don't know what it would take for someone to explain to them what those deportations would cause to your neighbors' farms or the factory in your hometown. Factory
Okay.
work, like I said,
Okay.
is crazy thick with immigrants.
Well, and to your point here too is I know I grew up in the middle of nowhere. I know how it feels to look at the stuff that goes on in town and be like, that'll never affect me. The city's an hour and a half away. Not my problem. Until you experience a housing bubble where whichever place is popular, be it farmlands, be it suburbs, be it city, whichever one gains popularity immediately fills. And then people start to look at the fringes and it'll create this fucking tidal wave of increasing costs. We saw this happen in California and with San Francisco. That went from a shithole that people didn't want to live in to a tech boom capital. And that bled out to an hour and a half north into wine country. It raised wine country house prices more than wine country did. Holy shit. I've never considered all this. I always just think about it like, well, fuck, they contribute taxes, they're labor. Why would it just doesn't seem to make sense in my brain that we would want to get rid of this? We should just have a program. Hey,
Here's
here you
a
go.
here's a long shot, but if undocumented immigrants who make up
Yeah.
a large portion of Texas's manufacturing and construction industries, which I focus largely on those because those are the industries I'm most familiar with. So I didn't have to do a bunch of contextual research underneath it. This was just
Yeah.
easier, and
Yeah.
it's all where they're concentrated, so it just made the most sense. Anyway, Americans will have to replace those jobs, which
Yeah.
means those companies will have to pay more, which means inflation.
They should,
But it
yeah.
also means more Americans doing more physical labor again. More
Which is kind of
Americans
a good
swinging
thing.
that fucking hammer, learning that skill again.
Yeah.
That means motherfuckers out there who swinging a hammer get real mad at stuff. And eventually that hammer is going to start turning toward that fucking White House because now you got a whole state of Texans who are physically fit from hauling fucking lumber for 10 hours a day and throwing rebar down a rack all fucking day. And
Oh
they're
shit.
mad. They're mad at you for getting rid of Juan because he was doing this shit.
Oh God, like I think that's the thing. The current political parties, both sides, do a fabulous job of keeping us divided, so that we don't think like this. Because I've talked to very, very conservative people. I agree with them on everything except for the racism. Like that's where I draw the line. That's it. Like
Yeah.
the rest of
Yeah.
it has
Like
its points. It's a political spectrum, and we're all on it.
it's
Ah,
not the only spectrum I'm on, but it's neither here nor there.
same. Wee. Uh,
Here's another thing about text. I think we closed that loop, right? I don't want to leave anything
yeah,
open.
I think so. Yeah.
So another thing that I found odd was that government employment in Texas rose by 3,500 jobs in December. They're gearing up.
Damn, yeah, they are. They're
They're getting ready
prepping
for this
for,
shit.
yeah,
And there
big
are
bureaucrats.
45,000 homeless people in Texas. It's not really relevant, probably, but I mean, it's probably kind of relevant. Yeah. I just thought the
Yeah.
3,500 jobs added by the like government state Texas government jobs. 3,500
Yeah.
of them. What the for what? Obviously, insurance claims and deportations.
Yep. It's the bureaucracy is the new supply chain.
Yeah,
uh
dude. Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about investment of a lifetime? Elon Musk bought the fucking nation for $250 million.
oh yeah, President Musk.
President
That shit blows
Musk,
my
who has
mind.
no lineage here.
I'm really glad that like both of my grandfathers who passed aren't here to see it because they were the ones that would like really just be shocked at this. And I'm talking red as can be men who like my grandpa Jack before he passed brought it up and just he's like, we're not what we used to be. We're not. He was so confused why we weren't in Ukraine. And he was a master sergeant in the Marine Corps, served in active
And
duty in Vietnam. Did some crazy shit, experienced horrible things. And he was just like, why aren't we in Ukraine? What, like, this is exactly why we maintain our military force is to defeat Russia. And he's just like, all these politics and how it's coming down and everyone's divided doesn't matter anymore. Like, they've forgotten we're all Americans. And like hearing that from a very stoic red man was wild, you know? Because shit,
dude,
we're just falling into the traps of the elite left and right. It's so sucky. The attrition rate for the people is bad right now.
I mean, there's some resistance out there. You know, you got Gen Z just really putting employers on blast on their layoffs, and they're
Oh yeah,
ghosting interviews now just to waste corporate time. Like, dude, that's what I'm
hell yeah.
saying. Like, Gen Z, fucking keep rocking that shit. I got too much to live for. I got a mortgage. I can't do that, but I'm living vicariously through you.
Once the revolution starts, I'm happy to join it. That's to the FBI agent listening.
So for the last little bit of this segment, I feel like we
Yeah.
covered some pretty all right stuff here.
God,
Mila
yeah.
Joy on Twitter. Uh, her Twitter profile says, "Wife and mom, politically conservative, and MAGA, Trump 24 now more than ever. Hashtag America First, hashtag MAGA." Um,
Mhm.
she has a tweet here with 657,000 views, but it asks a good question.
Uh-huh.
Would you turn in an illegal alien for $1,000 a pop? Honest question.
Ooh, mercenary system. If
So, I mean,
uh,
immediately, that's going to cause false flags everywhere. Like, oh yeah,
yeah,
fucking, Derek across
as
the road, or something is
yeah,
illegal. You got to ship him back to Canada or something. Because, you know,
yeah. I heard his name is
um,
actually Derek.
Derek,
Oh God.
he's from the French Quebec region,
Yes, yes.
but $1,000 a pop. So you're thinking $1,000 a person. A family of four is 4 grand right there. These are tough times, and people in the comment section clearly largely voted red, and
I mean,
red
yeah, that makes
states
sense.
tend to have more financial problems than, not at the government level per se, but personal.
Yeah,
Like, they have lower wages, they have worse insurances, and they have worse just fucking standards of work, honestly,
yeah.
generally speaking. So you have to think that, like, the people that she's talking to could use that money. Fuck, I could use
Yep,
that money.
yep,
I wouldn't do it. But if you put enough of them in front of me, I would have to be forced to face myself and be like, okay,
yep.
like, there's 50
You're
of them
like,
there. I
yeah, I was
could
gonna
pay
say, like, you
a
rock up on a
lot with
Mexican
this.
birthday party. Yeah, yeah.
And so, like,
No, it's fuck. Yeah.
this is not an easy question to answer, and I believe she probably she's popular in my area, according to Twitter. Um, it was a
Damn.
harder question for me to answer to myself. So I wanted to bring
Because
it up to you, and to you listening. Ask yourself, how many people would it
yeah,
take for you to go, that's the one? Which one would be the last one? Would it be 51 persons? Well, what if the 51st person is 6 months old? Is that
yeah,
baby worth $50,000? Or is every single person before that baby worth $49,000, and the baby is just collateral damage?
yeah. Well, then beyond that too, like my mind goes to where are they being sent off to? You know, like Our
Yeah,
government
there's no
doesn't have a great
logistics
track
talked about.
record doing it well. Yeah, like that's a scary thought. That would be like if somebody fled here from Ukraine and we were like, ah, you're an illegal immigrant, buddy, and deported him back. Like, holy shit, we're sending him into a war zone. I mean, honestly, I think that the truth of
If
it is that sounds like selling people, and I always hate that concept. You know,
human trafficking, I mean that fucking is that state sanctioned human trafficking.
so there's this really fun
Essentially,
thing
obviously.
in.
But this idea, this thought experiment, that's basically state sanctioned human trafficking. They would
So what
use
I like,
Lockheed Martin and Halliburton or whatever to
yeah,
Raytheon to like go in and do the dirty work, I'm sure. But
oh yeah,
the National Guard's still going to provide the see through, the big fucking planes.
yeah. So there's this game called Stellaris, and there's some funny things you can set up your government as, and you can like set yourself to purge unwanted pops every now and then. So like get rid of population. But they always have these great ways of like saying, oh, well, we're converting to culture. Yeah, like that's cultural genocide. So it's this running joke of like those kinds of phrases are really easy to come by and we see them every day, but we don't realize kind of what the real satirical truth is. Because yeah, you're right. It's human trafficking. Instead of like finding a more humane system, there's gotta be a way. And I'm not even saying
They
that like my idea is solid, but we gotta test it. We gotta try.
Man, they've really got a good PR team over there, don't they? Like it's just a simple question. And the reactions too, the fourth
Yeah.
comment down. Um, I would rather our laws and judicial system actually work instead of them having us turn on each other. Ellipses.
Hell yeah.
With that being said, it's not going to be that way. If it's not going to be that way, I have a few addresses. That's $1,000 per illegal, not $1,000 per illegal's household, right?
Yeah. Fuck.
Uh-huh. And that
Uh
has 701 likes. Another one, 6.7 thousand likes. That is wrong to do. Communist countries put their citizens against each other.
yes.
It happened during COVID. That is not America. Let law enforcement do its job. And so I'm into that.
Yep. That's the one I kind of line up with of like there's these things that sound a little propaganda-y now to me, and it's weird to realize it. Where if you're having a conversation about the shit that goes on in China, just swap out China for the US and then take a step back and see how much of it feels the same. It's a little
I've
jarring.
heard that. I heard I heard that about the Jews too. Um, yeah, it's like I heard that something along the lines of like, well, if you just swap out Jew and insert your denigrated class or whatever, and
Yep.
basically read a Nazi Germany speech, it's going to look just like whatever the fuck they're talking about. It's just instead of
It-
Jews, it's Haitians or whatever.
yeah, yeah, whichever group is convenient to blame. I think what's interesting though is like the Make America Great Again concept is a good one at like top level until you get into how they're doing it. I respect that they respect the country so fucking much. That's really cool. But goddamn, unfortunately, it feels like they got the short end of the stick right now, and like how the manipulation's going down.
What would you do if you were in a situation facing deportation like this, especially if you had already established ties? You've been here 15 years, under the radar, paying cash, earning cash. You got a good life. Your landlord's chill. He understands your situation. He's just letting it slide. He's not trying to be anything. He's not. You got roots here now.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Like if I was in that situation, it would feel like such a shitty one because we're assuming the situation is I'm going to be deported. I was flying under the radar for a bit, but doing the right things otherwise. It would feel like a betrayal. Because honestly, the first question in my mind is like, can't you teach me how to be a citizen? Honestly, like I'm willing to go through that process. Like I want to be here. I've proven that I can be here. I'm already doing the stuff that I'm supposed to do as a citizen. Like just tell
Yeah,
me
I'm
what I
already
need to
contributing
improve.
$4.9 billion to the state of Texas, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, I think sometimes people get caught up in looking at the individualist pieces of it and making that the whole thing and conflating it, like you mentioned, gang takeovers and things like that. Healdsburg in California had a gang problem for a bit. We literally had people driving down mountains shooting at each other from moving vehicles. So like
Badass.
it was wild. The Norteños and the Sureños, I think it was. Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah, it was red versus
Norteños
blue.
and
It was
Centennials.
it was terrifying, but shit. That's an example of like the bad eggs that need to be filtered out. Absolutely. And like we don't have any perfect system. So we just kind of got to know that risk is there, but we gain so much from helping these people.
Speaking of helping these people, one of the comments in here with only 15 likes about for $1,000, would you turn them in? This dude goes, I'd split it with him though. I mean,
Oh,
you know
holy
what?
shit. That's
You
a
know
that's an
what? Like,
economy.
I don't know. Like now I'm thinking, Corey Lewis here with a beard, and he's very Republican looking. Uh, he might be onto something here.
Yeah.
Because
Fuck.
if I
That'd be
can split
brilliant.
it with them, they can get a plane ticket. No, they can't get on a plane, can they?
Good of it.
But if I can
You
split with
said
them,
it.
they can at least pay for some kind of safety when they get over there for a short term.
Oh no, let's take this fucking deeper. We'll make friends with Jorge. Jorge's gonna get across the border over this way. I'm gonna be like, hey, I turned him in. We split it. And then like a day later, he's gonna be back. I'm gonna be like, look at that. He somehow got back. And we'll just do that every single fucking day until it's like I've got this like little squad. And
Of
I like
Jorge's.
I hate to say it, but I feel like the US government is so slow to respond to stuff like this that I could see the US government like being like, wow, damn, they're just really good at getting in. It would be tens of thousands of dollars before the government catches you. Oh, you can game that system
And
so
then by
hard.
that point, you could fuck off to New Zealand or somewhere. I don't know. The
You're
Vatican.
like, yeah,
They don't extradite.
you're like, I pretended to bust Hispanic families. I split the bill with them. They make a bunch of money. We made a bunch of money. We all went to a different place. Bought ourselves a beautiful place in Mexico.
And Bali or something.
Fuck
Costa
yeah.
Rica. All right.
Peru.
I think that kind of wraps it up for that one. Huh? We got some stabbing, some shooting, and some threatening to talk about here in a minute. So stick around
Yeah.
for that if you are here for the live stream. If not, stay safe out there, people.